Good morning, Borada. I'm Allison Dutoit, and I'm here to help guide us through the day. Welcome to the Wales Millennium Centre and to the third Cardiff Convention. We have the great pleasure today of spending the day together discussing Cardiff's future and thinking about how this capital city and region can respond to the opportunities and challenges of being a capital city in times of growth and some uncertainty. Now, the first convention in 2014 followed the stated ambition of the then newly elected leader of the council, Bale, that Cardiff could become Europe's most livable capital city. The second convention saw the launch of the Liveable City Report, with data proclaiming a strong sense of satisfaction among residents, among other things. This data supported Leader Bale's ambition, as the European Commission's urban audit placed Cardiff as the sixth most livable capital city in Europe. Now, I had the honor of being at last year's event, and I asked Leader Bale after that, I said, okay, what now? How do you respond to such a strong response, whilst also recognizing that chasm of complacency that good results can bring, or the necessary caution that you need to move forward with when you have good statistics? How do you take numbers forward into live, active place, real projects? Now, the answer, I think, is in part represented by our venue for this third Cardiff Convention. We sit in one of Wales' most well-known contemporary buildings at the edge of Cardiff Bay, largely unrecognizable to those who worked here when 1/3 of the world's coal shipped out of this bay. But this is a public building. It's a celebration of Welsh culture, and it's a gathering place for people who live here, who visit here, and who work here. This venue faces the public, faces the city, the country, and even Europe, arguably, certainly England, as do those people who are here making the city more livable. The Welsh Millennium Centre is an internationally known venue. And yet, we're in a rehearsal room, right? The main hall is next door, it's right behind me. And we're not there yet. We're not in the main hall yet. I think we recognize that rehearsal is something that we continue to do even after opening night. That we need to continue to learn and to develop and to expand our practice to respond to ever-changing demands and invitations. So Cardiff is on a really good road, but we're still finding our way to the real high points. We're not yet in the main hall. We're working towards this vision, toward the aim, and I think that we need to practice those components that make up the city that we wish Cardiff to become. So in the last year, Cardiff's starting to put action into delivering a more livable city, recognizing that this requires collaborative practice as well as deliverable projects. So today, here in the third convention, we've assembled an agenda that invites all of you to take part in this practice, to lead the way into new collaborations and ideas and approaches. We really want this to be a hands-on and heads-on event. This morning, we'll hear 4 narratives of education, transport, sustainable strategies, and technologies, and talk about how these can actually change lives. In the afternoon, we're going to ask you to take part of 2 of 4 workshops. And those sessions are going to ask you to bring your expertise and experience to these 4 different aspects that Cardiff is actively engaged in looking at strategically and in terms of projects on the ground. We'll close the day by bringing together the threads of the day and talking about how we can help guide that vision forward. So I think we have a very positive a lot of positive conversations happening today, I hope. Now, I'd be remiss, I've got some housekeeping to address, of course. There's no planned events today, no planned fires or anything like that. So if we hear an announcement over the system, I'm told that it will, first of all, tell us Something's been reported, but don't worry. And then the second announcement, if such things come, will tell us to evacuate. And there will be staff from the WMC to help us. I want to tell you there's 3 exits. There's one over here and 2 in the back. And they'll be signed and you follow your way out. And the meeting point is out at the Pierhead building. In the workshops this afternoon, they also exit directly out of the building and down to the cafe on the opposite end of the building. We'll be meeting here this morning, taking coffee break up on the landing, and then lunch will be down the hall, and the workshops are on the opposite end. I'll talk about that after lunch. We encourage you to tweet, Instagram, shout out on your social media. The hashtag is #ChooseCardiff. Although please turn these things off to silent, if you will, otherwise. The event is being filmed and will be streamed live, and you can check that on the Invest in Cardiff website, which is easy to find by Googling, of course. Now, finally, and most importantly, it's my pleasure to welcome Councillor Phil Bale, leader of the City of Cardiff Council, and our host for the day, really. Leader Bale?
Thank you very much indeed, Allison. And I'm delighted to be working with Allison now. Many of you might know that she's been appointed as the challenge advisor for our new public service board in Cardiff. And I think it's incredibly important for us as we move towards establishing that board and delivering on that vision of livability, that we do have that external voice that pushes us to do even more. And I welcome you all here today to the 3rd annual Cardiff Convention. 2 years ago, at the very first one, we were mesmerised by a man who delivered a talk which set the tone for the whole day. Some of you here today may remember Eric Kuhn, and I'm sure if you attended the 2014 convention, you certainly wouldn't have forgotten him. A world-leading architect and a gentleman, Eric played a key role in redesigning the Hayes and St David's 2, where he helped create an urban space loved by residents and visitors alike. And any of you who remember the architectural horror story that was the old Oxford Arcade will know that this was no mean feat. Sadly, Eric passed away earlier this year, and I'd like to take this opportunity to pay my respects to a man who I truly found inspirational. At that conference in 2014, Eric spoke passionately and in vivid colours about cities and their citizens. He told us then that great cities and great buildings need to tell stories. It was something that struck me then, and it stayed with me since. Cities do need to tell stories. Vibrant, exciting, interesting stories. Stories that speak of a place and of people who live there. Stories that hint at a shared future and a common goal. It's a thought well worth investigating, especially today as we gather to discuss the future of Wales's capital city, our own city, Cardiff. And what does the story of Cardiff tell the world? And what future do we want? When I took the role of city leader 2.5 years ago, I set out a vision to make Cardiff Europe's most livable capital city. And I deliberately set out our great capital city against all the great capital cities of Europe because I believe in Cardiff and I believe in its story. A story of a city with a proud industrial heritage, becoming one of the world's greatest seaports, known right across the globe. And I believe in its future, a future which will tell the story of a city which gives its citizens a standard of living and a way of life equal to any European capital. A city which equally values fairness, heritage, and most importantly, a city which values its people. A place where we can all be proud to call home. But how do we go about creating a city, especially in a post-Brexit world? Cardiff voted to remain by a margin of 60 to 40, and I'm proud that our city voted to remain in. But like it or not, the Prime Minister has said Brexit means Brexit. It will bring risks and opportunities, and as a city, we need to be on that front foot. Cardiff is well known for a cultural harmony well ahead of its time. There are more than 100 languages spoken here, and people from more than 100 countries have chosen to make Cardiff their home. Our welcome is what we stand for as a city, and this cannot and will not change. In response to Brexit, Cardiff will not retreat from the world. In fact, we will do the very opposite. That is why our continued membership of Eurocities, a network of Europe's largest cities, who between them govern over 130 million people across 35 countries, will be more important than ever. It's why our seat at the UK Core Cities Cabinet, alongside leaders and mayors of other major British cities, matters. And it's why the new mayor of Bristol and the leader of Newport also recognise the importance and are committed to our Great Western Cities Alliance. As leader of the City Council, I've been clear that Cardiff needs to be big, British, bold and world in its outlook. These are the cities that we need to be comparing ourselves to, learning from and aspiring to match. I believe strongly that Cardiff is much more than just another Welsh local authority. It is one of Europe's great capital cities. That's why our mindset is based on being open and embracing the role that our capital city must play in connecting Wales to the wider world. And Brexit certainly won't change this. Across Britain, we know that some of the poorest communities, those who feel most left behind, are those that voted to leave. And while we're making great strides regenerating our city centre, we must not forget that some of Wales's poorest communities are within walking distance of the nation's commercial engine. Indeed, they are just 5 minutes walk away from where we are here today. Yes, Cardiff's economy is strong. Jobs growth has been higher in Cardiff than any major UK core city. Yes, over the last 10 years, economic output has gone up by 10%. But over the same period, the average wage in the city has fallen by 5%. That's the average worker, not those who are unemployed or amongst the lowest earners who have had a far tougher time. And what's more important, many of those people who are in work are in temporary or low-paid work. That too many people are being left behind is a massive economic and political challenge. And our obligation as city leaders is to define a positive response to these challenges. Firstly, we need to recognise the role that cities can play in generating economic growth. All the evidence shows that it is cities that drive economies for nations and not the other way around. There are no prosperous regions anywhere in Europe that do not have a successful core city at their heart, and national policymakers across the globe are adopting this reality. These are lessons that we still need to learn here in Wales. And put bluntly, for Wales to succeed, it needs an industrial strategy which exploits the power of its cities. This would mark a radical shift in Welsh economic policy, but now, more than any time, with Brexit looming, radical thinking is needed. A one-size-fits-all economic strategy that is blind to the differences between Cardiff and Carnarvon will prove to be a straitjacket for our Welsh economy. And much is made of devolution to English cities, but I've seen through the UK Core Cities Cabinet that the powers that they've been given do not compare to those already devolved to us here in Wales. And we need to use those devolved freedoms that we have here to push our cities further. Cardiff is currently contributing £70 million annually to the rest of Wales from its business rates, yet the city's infrastructure has been radically underfunded, and this needs to change. Similarly, the City of Cardiff Council also receives the second lowest level of government support of all local authorities in Wales, equivalent to around £150 less per head of the population than the national average. But Cardiff is a success story. It could do so much more, though, for the region and for the country if it was properly funded and nurtured. If we are backed fully, then we can build a capital city of the future in which we can all be proud. Secondly, Wales's economic strategy and investment programme has been distorted by European funding. The nation and the city region have for the past 20 years been cut in two, between Objective 1 and Objective 2, convergence and competitiveness, the valleys and our cities. One of the few positives of Brexit should be an end to this unhelpful split. And the UK and Welsh governments now need to secure the billions promised to Wales by the Brexiteers. And we need to spend it on projects which will give us the greatest bang for the buck for our Welsh economy. Finally, we also know that some of the areas where investment is making a major impact. Currently, £1 billion of a private sector investment is being used to support the development of Central Square, delivering around 1 million square feet of Grade A office space anchored by the new BBC Wales headquarters. The City Council is investing in a new transport interchange to support this, meaning that we can improve connectivity between jobs and the people who need them. Then there is also more investment needed, though. And we know that Cardiff Central train station needs to be improved to cope with peaks in demand and the projected surge in passenger numbers. The forecasts suggest that the number of journeys will grow from 13 million to 23 million by 2023, and then to 33 million by 2043. And the delivery of the metro will only accelerate this demand. A modern and fit-for-purpose train station is therefore, in my view, essential for this city to compete in retaining and attracting jobs. And the government needs to recognise this and must hand over the money needed to modernise our station, as it's already done so in places such as Birmingham, Manchester and Edinburgh. Despite this underfunding and despite the lack of powers, we need to still manage to make, managed to make incredible progress over the past 18 months. And the city deal that we've signed earlier this year is testament to this, but it isn't enough on its own. When I spoke here back in 2014, I made the case that we needed to shift from a strategy which focused solely on growing our economy. I argued that we needed a broader approach, focused on fundamentals of what makes living and working in a city like Cardiff great. Education, affordable housing, transport, health, culture, parks, and our green spaces. They all come together to make a great and prosperous city. And that's not to say we're not focused on growth. We are. There's a good story to tell there too. Over 100,000 people more are now, over 10,000 more people are in employment this year than last. Unemployment has fallen by almost 20%, and visitor numbers are up by 5%. With the Champions League final taking place here in June, we expect these figures to be higher again next year. But this success is built on a bedrock investment in our education, transport, housing, culture, and our green spaces. Education in particular has been the #1 priority for this city. For too long, our school system has been letting the children of this city down. And indeed, it was shameful that in one of Britain's smartest cities, we had a failing school system. But over the past 4 years, we have turned this around, and I pay tribute to everyone in this city that has worked incredibly hard to do just that. Together with the Welsh Government, we are now investing over £160 million in our schools, and more than half of this has been funded by the City Council itself. And this is a massive investment programme which sees us building new secondary and primary schools right across the city. But it's not just a strategy built on new buildings. We've turned around the performance in our schools too. Right across the board, the number of pupils achieving at least 5 good GCSEs, including maths and English or Welsh, has risen by 13% since 2012. In local schools such as Cllr, that figure is 21%, a fantastic achievement, and I pay tribute to that. We have also prioritised protecting the vulnerable, and I can tell you that the City Social Services Department is now the most improved in Wales. We're building houses, and this is a crucial issue for us too. Houses are less affordable here in Cardiff than almost all major British cities. A typical house in Cardiff costs 7 times the average salary. In Glasgow, it's 4 times the average salary. Our local development plan, which was signed off this year, will see 40,000 new homes built in the city. And we're working closely with developers to make sure that these new communities are both affordable, but also green, sustainable, and connected. We've also established a new housing partnership programme, which will see 600 new council homes built over the next 10 years. And our parks and green spaces have also improved, with a record number of 10 green flags awarded in the city. We've also continued to invest in culture, helping to establish a Cllr, the Welsh Cultural Centre, in the city centre. And of course, we secured the Champions League final, something I'm particularly proud of, which will be the biggest sporting event anywhere in the world next year. And let's not forget, our city is safer than ever. Simply put, people in Cardiff are half as likely to be a victim of crime as they were 10 years ago. So sport, culture parks, affordable housing, social care, education, communities, and our people, these are all the things that make a great city. Because if we create a city where people want to live, economic growth will follow. According to the latest EU urban audit, and it was mentioned by Allison, the gold standard report on the quality of life in European cities, Cardiff is now ranked the 3rd best capital city for quality of life, up from 6th in 2013. That means 97 out of every 100 Cardiff residents who were interviewed said they were satisfied to live in our city. And it puts us ahead of Stockholm and Copenhagen, and only 2 percentage points behind Oslo, the top performing European capital. 2 years ago, at our first convention, I said we could be #1, and I firmly believe that we're now on track to do so. And it's why today's agenda is so relevant. It's an agenda which covers all aspects of city life. How do you make sure we have great schools in this city? How do we help people live healthy lives? How can we get more cars off the road and help people move around Cardiff? And how do we embrace new digital technologies? Today is that conversation about Cardiff. And I want to hear your ideas. On behalf of Eric Kuhn, I want to hear your stories about Cardiff. Stories that will help us harness the energy and passion that exists for this brilliant city. Stories that will tell everyone who hears them what Cardiff stands for. Stories that will help us deliver on making our vision possible of creating Europe's most livable capital city. And I hope you have a brilliant time today, and I look forward to talking to many of you throughout the course of today. Thank you very much. Diolch yn fawr.